Hello and welcome everybody to Flicker Effect and our weekly look at news from the world of film, television, and pop culture. I'm David Lotz. Joining me, as always, is Bobby Jackson.
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
It's going pretty good. We're here. It's another week of news and plenty of stuff to talk about. And HBO Max is here now. And have you watched any yet?
Yeah, let's start with that. It did premiere today,
It did.
and you had texted me this morning. It was so funny because you guys, Yasha, and Michelle are up before me, I think,
Oh,
because
yeah.
obviously you being on the East Coast, 3 hours ahead. So when I wake up, it's around maybe 5:30. And I wake up and I see this whole long text stream
Oh, yeah.
already.
Yasha
I'm
had a
like,
lot to
wow, you
say.
guys are active.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I was
funny
like,
because
wow, what's going on?
I woke up with enough time this morning to before I had to leave for work to jump on. Hey, I'll jump on YouTube TV. YouTube TV is my TV provider, and we were talking. A little bit of backstory. We were talking yesterday via text about how YouTube TV doesn't yet have HBO as like an add-on channel, which I even looked up again, and there was a lot of news sources back when they revealed that they were going to add HBO that it was supposed to be sometime earlier in the spring, and then HBO Max would come, later. But yeah, it still wasn't available. So I got up this morning and I decided to sign on to YouTube TV, and then HBO still wasn't available as an add-on. Because I figured, hey, I already have YouTube TV. I'll just subscribe to HBO through that, and then I can use that as a way to sign into HBO Max. But yeah, eventually YouTube TV made it happen, and I was able to add it on later in the day.
Yeah, so it's finally arrived, and I'd seen one of the articles. It said it had like 10,000 hours worth of material, and it's interesting because they have so much on there. There's like stuff from Studio Ghibli. There's things from the Criterion. There's Friends, all the Friends people have been waiting for since it left Netflix, and just so much material. But I found it funny is that Yasha, he was in the text thread, and he quickly noted the things that weren't there as
He did,
opposed to
yes.
the material that was there. And it's interesting when you think about it and look at it, is that there's some things missing from the DCEU aspect
Right.
of the Warner Brothers arm. They seem to have Batman pretty well covered, but
I
that's
noticed that.
about it.
Yep.
There's not much of the other superhero stuff there, like Superman stuff. I didn't see anything from him. Um,
No, you're
I
right.
don't
I didn't even think about
remember.
that.
Yeah, I don't think I saw one stitch of anything of Superman
No.
on the service. And then there's other missing things there as well. But I haven't done much with it to answer your initial question in terms of checking it out. The only thing I did get a chance to check out was Looney Tunes. So Looney
Mm.
Tunes has Warner Brothers has produced new Looney Tune cartoons featuring the old characters that you know and love, like Bugs Bunny, Yosemite Sam, uh, Daffy Duck, and in certain iterations, like Daffy Duck, he's his classic Daffy self instead of the more, I guess, the irritating kind of Daffy Duck that he became.
Okay.
And so it's kind of cool seeing him being kooky and weird and quirky. And I watched the first episode, and in the first episode, there's two shorts. They're each about 5 to 6 minutes in length. The first one was Daffy and Porky Pig together, and I gotta say, I laughed a lot. I laughed way more than I thought I would, especially at the first one because uh, the two of them together were a really good combo in the way they worked off of each other, and
Yeah.
it was I smiled right from the beginning when I started watching it because it opens with the classic Warner Brothers Looney Tunes theme that
Hmm.
you always hear when those cartoons come on, and the animation is different, it's updated, but you get used to it pretty quickly. And from there, it's just it felt like it was the old school cartoon, even down to the credits when it goes off, and it has those credits that you remember when it would end one of the shorts as well. So everything felt authentic to the way that those old cartoons were. And I'd be curious if you were to sit down with your kids and watch it to see what they would think, because for me, it felt really good in a nostalgic kind of way that I felt like they really did justice to the property of the old school feel and vibe of it. But I'd be curious what a new generation of kids who didn't grow up with them would think of Bugs Bunny and those guys.
Well, I'll say to that, my at least for my kids, we had a subscription to, I don't know if you ever heard of the channel Boomerang. I think that's what it's
Yeah,
called.
yeah.
And I had a subscription to that app for a while. And my kids were watching a lot of that stuff on there. A lot of
Okay.
classic Looney Tunes stuff on there. And I mean, it didn't matter that it was older. They seemed to love it. So as you're talking about this, because I mean, I've barely explored the HBO Max app. I've kind of just got
Same.
signed in. I kind of looked around a little bit. I haven't watched anything on it yet. It seems like you've at least watched a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm thinking, man, there's actually probably going to be a lot of good content for the kids on there, especially too. I don't know how much my kids will enjoy the studio. Was it Studio Ghibli
Yeah.
stuff? Though I'm excited about that. There's a lot of that I've
Yeah.
never seen, and I want to watch a lot of that stuff. But it seems like kind of like the Disney Plus app that there's going to be plenty for the kids to watch on there. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to there being an easier way to access the app. Right now, it doesn't seem
Yes.
like you can't
Hmm.
get it on Roku devices, which I feel like that's a big
Right.
hole to not have. Well, I mean,
And
Roku's
Amazon.
and Amazon Fire TV devices. That seems huge. Um,
It is.
yeah,
80 million people, it said that
yeah.
between the two are essentially left out in the cold. Now, they, from an article I saw, they are working on getting them into the fold. But right now, they're still, I guess it's coming down to a lot of pretty much what you would imagine money in terms of revenue sharing and all that good stuff. So it's a matter of if those two camps can meet somewhere where maybe neither of them are specifically happy with the way the terms work out, but they can live with it. And I think that might be where they have to come to, because I don't think either is willing to gonna get their specific way out of it. Um, at most, if I would say if there is going to be someone who gets their way out of it, I'd have to guess it'd be HBO Max, because they are the new kid in town, and I think they are a heavyweight studio that can maybe manage to help push some of those streamers like a Roku and Amazon a little bit further, just by carrying that streaming service. So we'll see. I kind of imagine, and from one of the articles I read, they did say that if anyone is the first to kind of come out of the gate where it'll get signed, it would be Roku. So that might be something you'll see on the soon horizon front, as opposed to maybe later. But Amazon, it seemed like it was pretty slow in their process. So I wouldn't count on that anytime soon.
Right. Well, enough about HBO Max. Plenty of other things to talk about. What's been going on in the news lately?
Yeah, news is starting to pick up. I think it's maybe part of the fact that some of the things that are happening now with the COVID-19 and everyone anxious to kind of get back into the swing of things, that's attributing to the idea of more projects being announced or some more news starting to trickle out. And one of the things that we had heard about maybe a couple weeks ago, and I don't believe we discussed it on the show, but there was an article saying that Tom Cruise is wanting to make a movie in space. And we didn't know much about it at the time, other than it was going to be him working alongside of NASA and Elon Musk. Well, one of the people who was in on that whole project from the beginning, in terms of coming up with the idea of it, was Doug Lyman. And now it's been release from Deadline saying that Doug Liman is going to be the director. And I'll read from what it says from Deadline. It says, Doug Liman will boldly go where no film director has gone before. Liman plans to accompany Tom Cruise on the action-adventure film to be shot in outer space that is being mounted independently for now and involves Elon Musk, SpaceX, and NASA. Liman, who directed Cruise on the movies American Made and Edge of Tomorrow, and who separately directed such hits as Mr. and Mrs. Smith, The Bourne Identity, Go, and Swingers, is eager to reteam on this first of its kind project. So at this point, Tom Cruise, I think, will have been able to, if this gets made, and from the article it says that both of them are still working on a couple different projects, so it would be sometime after that before they could even really get started on it. But if this all goes to fruition, I got to imagine there's nothing else left on his bucket list in terms of things to accomplish. And he's got to be so happy about the way that this shakes out for him, because it's, who else as an actor or even as a person gets to do these crazy things and essentially write it off and not have to worry about doing it himself? I mean, he gets to do it in this arena of where it's his work, it's his job, but yet he's doing these crazy things that not everyone will ever get to experience. And I am so curious about this movie and what it will be. You get, the way I look at it is, however they do this, because some of the aspects that they mention is that it will shoot on a space station that's out there. And I can only imagine there's just so much of what can be done in terms of the large scope of the film. Like, maybe, is it what, 6 minutes of footage that we'll get of the whole thing? I don't know. They haven't said, but they are taking it seriously in that they said that everyone will be going to space camp that's going to be involved in the shoot, and just all the different things and training that they'll need to do to be able to take this flight and to be able to shoot on a space station. It's insane, and I gotta imagine people will be lined up to see it just because of the insanity of it, the first of its kind aspect of it. And so I know I'm anxious to see it. Have you thought about it at all? And would you think about the idea of Tom Cruise in space?
So first I'll say that I don't remember hearing this news that what you said, it was brought up, what, like 2 weeks ago, I think, without the
Maybe
news
even more than that. It's been within a month for sure.
Right. Without the news that Doug Liman was directing. And that's really kind of the new news here, that he's involved in, the filmmaker here behind this movie. So I hadn't even heard that. This was all news to me today when you shared this news with me. And at least I don't remember, and I feel like I would remember this. This seems pretty huge. Yeah, this is kind of, I almost, like, this is so kind of crazy to me that it's like, wait, is this real? Like, is this really happening? Like, I get that. I mean, we're hearing that NASA and SpaceX are involved, but really, like, what? I mean, are they just going to kind of do, like, basically on a plane that technically enters space, and then they come right back to Earth and shoot some stuff up there? But it doesn't sound like that's the case. That's how crazy this is, that I'm having a hard time grasping that this is actually going to happen. And that, I mean, in an era where, I mean, it's funny that we're talking about this on the day when we were supposed to finally launch, two astronauts here from Florida. And, unfortunately, because of weather, it didn't happen. But that, I mean, from, to my knowledge, there's been a big race to start, like, commercial flights with paying passengers, and we haven't really had that yet. And right. Yet now we're talking about, sending filmmakers to space to shoot something. And it just seems like, is that really going to be possible by the time they want to shoot this? And, of course, Tom Cruise, the guy doesn't age, but at the same time, eventually he will. And when are they going to shoot this? And is it really going to, because even though I joke that he doesn't age, he's getting to that point where, okay, you can kind of see he's getting up there. Like,
Yeah.
when they finally shoot this, how old is he going to be by that point? And even if he is as healthy as he's always been, will it be borderline like, wait, would this guy really be in space? I don't know. But we don't even know what they're making. We just know they're shooting something in space.
No.
So it's fascinating to me, but given the little bit that we know, but it also just seems insane. It seems insane.
It's insane, but to me, it's just fitting. Of anybody that you would ever hear about going to space that's famous, to me, it just sounds like, yeah, Tom
Yeah,
Cruise
it would be Tom
the
Cruise.
one.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's not
And
shocking at all.
no, and I feel like this would be a good note for him to go out on in
Yeah.
terms of maybe then start to say, okay, he's into that latter part of his career where he can just start doing dramas or something again
Right.
and not have to worry about the action stuff, because how do you top this?
Yeah, you don't.
I mean, I know he's yeah, you can't. So you still have his Mission Impossible movies that I guess they're working on,
Right.
which are what, 2 movies back to back, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So maybe this would come out after that, and that would be a nice fitting bow tie to all of his action stuff. So we'll see. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on it
for sure.
So this other news story that we got this week is interesting to me only because I'm curious what you think about it more so than what I feel about it. And that's that Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is getting its own series on Amazon Prime. And at this point, there's not much to go off of. There's no writer, there's no lead actress being attached to the series. All they say is that the project, and I'm getting this from Variety, and they say the project, which is currently titled The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, will not be a sequel or continuation of the story from the books or the films into which they are adapted. It will instead take Salander and place her in today's world with a wholly new setting, new characters, and a new story. So I don't know, in my own respect, how much that means to me, other than I would watch it because I've had experience with the original version of the film and the American version, and I've liked both. So I'm curious, and they can't seem to get this working in a cohesive way as a film series. So to see it as an Amazon series, I would be intrigued by, and I would think that if I'm going to try and guess what your reaction to it would be, I would imagine that your main concern would be on a level of quality, because I know, in fact, we just talked about it on Monday's show where I was saying I had watched Jack Ryan and you had only watched really an episode of it, and your takeaway was more so of the budgetary look and feel of it, seeming like it's almost something more for regular TV than it would be as a streaming service type marquee show. So I'm kind of curious, and I've said it from the start. What are you thinking about this, David?
Overall, I'm optimistic. Though, yeah, it's an Amazon series, so I especially get why you bring up the production quality of it, given, like you mentioned, we just talked about the fact that Jack Ryan, an Amazon series, I only watched the first episode because to me that show, for those who haven't heard my opinion, it kind of felt, it didn't feel like an HBO quality kind of production. It felt more like something I would see like on network television. It felt like a CBS show to me. And a show like Jack Ryan, I kind of wanted something more out of it, but I've only seen the pilot. I'm fully admitting that. So yeah, with this, my first reaction when I heard this is this in one sense falls in line with exactly what I've been wanting. I said this after I saw the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo film, directed by David Fincher, that I loved. And I would have loved to have seen more movies with Rooney Mara in that role. And it didn't even need to follow the books, which I haven't read anyway. So I guess it doesn't really matter to me if they follow the books. But just I thought it would be interesting to see a series of films with her as the lead, kind of going through different, kind of adventures, if you want to put it that way. And it sounds like that's what this show is going to be, basically. I don't know. We don't know who the actress will be, who the rest of the cast will look like. But in that respect, I think this sounds like a great idea. Now, yeah, of course, I would love for it to have a feel like that film did, that David Fincher film. Will they try to model that? I don't know. I don't know if even that second film tried to model that. I haven't even seen it.
Right.
So I can't say, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do, given that that's what American audiences have seen. And, a lot of people that did see it seem to respond positively to it, like I did. But I also haven't seen those, what are they, the Swedish films?
Swedish, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen those films either. I don't know how they kind of differ in feel and look compared to the film I've seen. I don't know. Maybe they'll kind of go for something like that, though, if it is a lot different. I'm not sure. But overall, I'm optimistic and kind of, I wouldn't say excited, but I'm definitely curious about this. But yeah, if it comes out and it's like, oh man, this looks like it would belong on NBC or something, and then I'll be bummed and probably not be interested in finishing it. Does that make sense?
It does. And that's what it comes down to. And I think really in these days, every one of these streaming services had some growing pains and are starting to get their footing to where they feel like, okay, we can't just kind of just skate by on name alone. We have to deliver something that people can say that this is movie level quality that I'm getting on my home screen. And I think that if they pay attention to that aspect and the quality of the show is there in the writing, then they're going to have a hit on their hands in any other way that you would of a series that's compelling based on the name. And it's to me in their best interest to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward by making a show that is true to the nature of the character in the series. And I imagine, if anything, and I don't know how closely the Swedish version or the American version adheres to the books, but maybe that's what this will do in that sense that the others didn't. If that's the case, I'm not for certain in terms of how closely they are to the books, but maybe that's where this one would differentiate itself. But either way, it's just going to be a matter of making sure that the quality is there and that it doesn't look cheap, and that they do their due diligence in terms of being good with the story and making this something that people would want to tune in for, week after week, I guess, season after season.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see it. I mean, it looks like it'll be a ways away. It just kind of entering pre-production at this point, right? I mean, just talk about it happening. So who knows how far off this is. But, what else?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be hearing more.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely be hearing more soon, I'm sure.
So how do you feel about an old movie called Labyrinth?
How do I feel about Labyrinth?
What are your thoughts?
It's funny you should ask, because I just watched this again. I've seen it many, many times, and I just watched it again very recently with my kids about a week or two ago. They watched it for the first time and seemed to love it. Was immediately wanting to watch it again to give their quick review, even though they're not here. But Labyrinth, that's a movie I grew up watching, as I just said, many, many times. I watched that movie a lot. I love Labyrinth. It is. I really like that movie. Based on your question and the way you're reacting to my response, I get the feeling maybe you're not a big fan. Have you seen Labyrinth, or do you?
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. But the thing is with Labyrinth, I would need to do a rewatch on it because I honestly can't remember much from it.
When's the last time you saw it?
It's got to be over 20 years. I think
Oh
I've seen
yeah.
it.
Okay.
So I would need to do a rewatch on it because for me, Labyrinth, I don't remember if this is the case. I would have to look it up on IMDb, but I always associate Labyrinth with Legend. And for
That's interesting.
yeah, because I think when I remember seeing Labyrinth, Legend was on HBO, and this is where always a frame of reference comes for me with certain things,
Okay.
is that how often they were on HBO, and I remember those two things being on HBO around the same time at some point in time. I don't know if it was right when they were first out or if this was in the cycle where they just sort of synced up and they were both on the service at the same time. But I always gravitated towards Legend and rewatching that. So
Hmm.
that one sticks into my mind a little bit more so than Labyrinth. And so I would have to go back and watch that just to see what, refresh my memory about it, because I really can't grab hold of much of anything from it from my memory, other than I know that David Bowie was in it and Jennifer Connelly. So that's about as far as I can remember. I really can't remember
Okay.
story elements or anything else. So that's why I asked what you thought about it. Well,
I
and
mean,
the other reason why I asked, oh, go
and
ahead.
I'll just say, like, there's no doubt a lot of my love for it is because as a child, it's childhood memories that I watched it a lot when I was young, and I liked it a lot then. I still think it's a great movie. I just rewatched it as I mentioned earlier, and
Hmm.
I'm always fascinated by Jim Henson puppetry films, and yeah, I think Labyrinth is way up there when it comes to those movies. I really like it.
Well, the other reason why I asked is because we did get a news story. I believe it was from yesterday that Scott Derrickson, who was supposed to do the latest Doctor Strange movie, is and left because of creative differences. He's jumped over to doing a Labyrinth sequel. Maggie Levine is set to write the script, and in the exclusive from Deadline, it says Scott Derrickson, who passed on reprising as director on Doctor Strange 2 over creative differences, has found a new fantasy franchise to take on. He has been set by TriStar Pictures to direct the sequel to Jim Henson's Labyrinth. Maggie Levine, who wrote and directed Into the Dark and My Valentine for Hulu, will write the script. And it's interesting because it doesn't say much in terms of what else they have planned for it, other than it's the fact that the series or that the movie is sort of a cult classic, and it had tie-in novels and comics and games and stuff, which I don't remember any of that stuff. But um,
Yeah, I don't
the
remember that
thing
any of
that I
that
found
either.
interesting, yeah, I'm like, really? They had those things? But the thing that I found interesting about it in the article, they do go on to say that Lisa Henson of the Jim Henson Company is producing, and Brian Henson is executive producing. So the reason why I found that interesting was because when we had our text thread talking about this in particular, Yasha was against the idea of them doing a sequel. He was on the idea of why do we need this? And one of the things that he mentioned was the puppetry and the idea of it not being able to live up to that. And seeing that Hensons are involved in this, I think that should say that they are going for a level of authenticity, especially because of Scott Derrickson. And I feel like he is the type of person who not only grew up on these types of things, same as we did, but he has a reverence for it, and he has a respect for that what's come before. And I believe if anyone's going to handle it with the type of dignity and care that it would need to be presented with, he would be able to do so. And having the Henses involved helps out a lot. And I don't know if you ended up watching it or didn't get a chance to see much of it, but the new Dark Crystal that came out on Netflix, man, what they're doing with the way that the puppets and they look now is phenomenal. So I can only imagine what this would look like now, and update it in a way that makes it look even more uh, in terms of the way they blend it in with the live action actors and stuff, that will make it look different than what we've seen so far with anything else. Because even in the Dark Crystal, they're all the puppets. They're not any of them are there's no humans, real life people in it. So it'll be so cool to see what they do with that in terms of that interaction in general. But I really do think that Scott Derrickson will deliver something really special with this project.
Yeah, I don't. I hate to say I don't have much to add. You kind of said it perfectly. I think Scott Derrickson is going to be a perfect fit for it. I mean, I think he'll handle it really well. In terms of, do we need something like this? I don't know. I guess I'm always happy to see that there's going to be something brought to film that's different. It's something that involves puppetry like this that we don't see stuff like this much anymore. And maybe I'm even extra kind of aware of stuff like this, considering, like, I've talked about Dragon Con before. I go to Dragon Con, and there's actually a puppetry track at Dragon Con. And having been exposed to that and seeing that the passion that, puppetry artists, puppeteers have for, that art, and just to know like how excited probably all of them are that this is happening and is going to be in cinema. I mean, back when Dark Crystal was announced for Netflix, and then when that came out, the excitement surrounding that from that community, and then this is going to be insane, I'm sure. And it's been quite a long time since since Labyrinth was in theaters. I think it's been long enough that, if to revisit it now, it'll be done the right way. I mean, yeah, if randomly, like 5-6 years after that movie, somebody decided to make a sequel, then yeah, who knows what we would have gotten. But this is a right time, and I think a right filmmaker that this could be kind of a perfect fit, and I'm really excited about it.
I did see someone say, and I don't, forgive me, I forget who it is at this point, but they were saying that it would have been kind of like very cool if the director on this would have been David Bowie's son. And
Oh, okay.
I I forget who's his son again.
I
I
I,
I
I
knew
don't
it.
remember either.
Well, let me look it up while you kind of vamp for a second. But
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who that would be. And yeah, I mean,
he's a famous director. I just can't remember what his name is.
yeah, I'm curious to see what you find as you quickly
Duncan
Google this.
Jones. Duncan Jones.
Oh, sorry. I completely forgot that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. Um, but
So
no, Scott Derrickson I think is a great fit.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, I don't know if you want to keep going. We
Yeah, we're
covered
pretty much
about
out of
30
time. I don't
minutes.
know if there's just like a couple of
Yeah.
quick things you wanted to kind of skim over real quick before we get out of here, but
Sure. There's I got a couple little quick tidbits. One is the fact that the Mandalorian, we all like the show from Disney Plus, but in actuality, it's had an effect on awards, and in this case, the Golden Globes. They've had to change a rule because of the Mandalorian, and I saw this on Variety, and it says announced by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association on Wednesday, voice only performances are not eligible in any acting category. That means even if characters are physically in the scene, actors whose faces are not visible are not eligible in any acting category. In The Mandalorian, which aired last fall, Pascal was in costume and hidden under a helmet throughout the show's 8 episode first season. It's not until the season finale that the character's helmet is removed and Pascal is finally seen for the first time. So I found it so interesting that they had to change a rule just because of the character in The Mandalorian being behind the mask and saying because you only hear his voice, he's not up for eligibility. But in this case, he would have been, just because even within the season finale, he has the mask off.
Right.
But it's like they had to make that distinction, and because they never had to do that before. Because
Yeah.
how often does that happen, that you see a character in mask like that?
And this was the one topic I was kind of interested in you bringing up, because yeah, I saw this, and the funny thing to me about this is to do it in this situation for the Mandalorian. But I mean, I don't know if we ever heard kind of a final tally, but we also know that he actually wasn't in the costume for, I think, a lot of that filming. I mean, we
Right.
know, like with the Bryce Dallas Howard episode, she mentioned she never worked with him. Like he was never on set.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you ever heard, but I haven't heard like how much was he actually in the suit when it all was said and done. Do you know?
I thought I remember hearing something of a number once before, but and being sort of surprised by it. But the other aspect on that is, and I know it was specifically with Bryce's episode, but
Right.
he was also doing a play at the time,
Yeah, he was
and
doing something
so
else. I remember hearing that
yeah,
too.
he was committed to something else, so that contributed as well to him not being in the suit. But I do remember there being something at one point in time saying that there was a significant amount of time that he was not in the suit
That's what I
and
thought
not
I heard
on
as
set
well.
and
Yeah.
doing, yeah, and just doing the voice. So um, I I just still find it so interesting that they had to make that clarification as a rule, because he was put forth as being wanting to be nominated, not himself, but how the studio or the company will
Right.
have
They'll.
their actors be
Hmm.
nominated for something. And he never got that nomination, but he was put forth. And so they were saying they made this rule essentially so someone in that specific uh, element would not even be eligible to be put forth for nomination. So
Right.
it is just kind of interesting because it's such a one-off thing. I can't imagine that being the case too often in any other TV show or film or anything of nature that would be nominated for a Golden Globe. So
Yeah.
it's curious just for that one particular thing.
Yeah. No, it's that was interesting to hear that they made that kind of change. But yeah, I think that'll do it this week for talking about news. As always, we'd love to hear back from everyone watching. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can comment right here on YouTube below. We also would love it if you would subscribe and like this post if you enjoy it. Help us grow the show. You can also always find us on Twitter and Instagram at Flickr_effect. And obviously, yeah, we're right here on YouTube, youtube.com/Flickr Effect. I'm David Lott.
Bobby Jackson.
Thanks for watching.